Hello and welcome to the Vinyl Sanctuary. My name is Christian and I hope that you will join me in taking refuge in records. So I'm here today with part 4 of my Top 100 Side 1 Track 1 series, and the number I'm going to be looking at today, or the numbers I should say, are 70 up to 61. So for people who may have landed on my video and are wondering what I'm talking about, what I've been up to over the past couple of months at the time of recording, please do check out the description box to this video that you're watching now, and you will find links to parts 1, 2 and 3 of the series. Now part 1 in particular is important, not just because it's the first batch of songs that I show, but also because it's the part where I explain all the rules and regulations that I put onto myself when I decided to undertake this series. Did put a few rules in there, so rather than retreading over them all now, people can just go back and watch part 1 and they can look at what that first little batch was down at the bottom, 100 up to 91. So really enjoyed doing the series so far. I thank everybody to date who has joined in with what I've been up to. It's been brilliant to see everybody else's picks in the comments section on the various videos that I've done. But I'm going to crack on now with part 4. We've got another 10 songs to get through, 10 opening tracks off studio albums. I'll endeavour to do my best to explain why I've chosen them, what these songs mean to me, why they've made that final cut in the 100, because I had a lot of songs to pick from, and we'll just take it from there, see how at what point and how long the video clock's in at. Okay, so coming up then at number 70 in my overall 100, we are going all the way back to 1974. It's this artist's debut album, solo debut album. He was part of a very, very acclaimed and a very brilliant glam rock, art rock group, so people will no doubt already have worked out who I'm talking about. And this artist went on to forge a wonderful career of his own, both as a producer and as a solo artist, and was especially a pioneer in the ambient realm. So I am talking about Brian Eno. The album is Here Come the Warm Jets, as I mentioned, released in 1974, and the opening track is called Needles in the Camel's Eye, and that is my number 70 choice in my top 100. So there's the artwork there for people to study. There you go. So you've got a picture of Brian Eno there, and you've got his reflection up there as well. And I would say that the artwork is very much in keeping with the feel and the vibe and the style of the album. It is very arty, it's very glammy. There are Roxy Music-esque touches to the record, as you would expect. I mean, he had been in the band for some time, done a couple of albums with them. But I think it was due to clashes with the other Brian in the group, Brian Ferry, that Eno decided to part company with Roxy Music and forge his own path. So there are members of Roxy that do appear on the record, and the song I'm talking about today, Needles in the Camel's Eye, is in fact a co-write with Phil Manzanera, who was of course the guitarist in Roxy Music. So what makes Needles in the Camel's Eye such a great song? Well, what it has going for it is that I love songs which have what I would call a chug to them. It's the best way that I can describe it. So Needles in the Camel's Eye is a great example of a chugging song. So it hits a rhythm, it's got a pattern to it, a vibe and a beat, and it just chugs along really nicely. Doesn't really deviate too much from that chugging pattern. There is a little break in there, there is some little bits and bobs where it does sort of take the foot off the gas, but for the most part, it's just a great chugging track. So whilst it doesn't sound like Virginia Plain sonically or musically all that much at all, you couldn't really compare them, I do feel that this song and Virginia Plain do share a similar kind of feel to them, because Virginia Plain is a song that kind of just careers along as well for its duration, and of course that was a track that very much has Brian Eno's identity all over it, I would say. That Virginia Plain was very much, I think, a high watermark of the time that Eno was in the group, amongst other great songs of that time as well. So other great sort of chuggy type songs, something like Roadrunner by the Modern Lovers, or Waiting for the Man by the Velvet Underground. Whilst all these songs don't sound similar to the other, and certainly don't sound similar to this, I just feel like they inhabit a similar kind of feel to them, and it's just something that I always do gravitate towards when I'm listening to music. If it's got a really good chugging beat to it, then I'm all there for it. The other thing that this song's got going for it as well is a really gorgeous, big, chunky guitar twang. So there's a part in it, and I believe it's played by Chris Spedding. It just kind of comes in pretty left field, and it's this sort of like, bow, 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 like this brilliant, big, low, shadows on steroids kind of like twang to it. It does, it sort of does its thing and gets out there pretty quickly. But it always puts a big grin on my face whenever it comes in. It comes into focus in the song, just because I remember the first time hearing it and not expecting it to be there, and maybe in some ways it shouldn't be there, but it just works. So that for me is, a bit of genius really, when somebody of Eno's talents can just almost like piece musical bits together, almost like like a patchwork, and just make it work. So Eno's taken influences from all over the shop here, but the end result is very much his own identity, very experimental in places. I mean, the album is an absolute joy to listen to, but with this series, I'm only focusing on opening tracks. So due to that lovely guitar bit by Spedding, Phil Manzanera, I believe, is playing the guitar elsewhere on the track. Eno's vocal itself, it is quite sort of Ferry-esque in a way. Certainly not the crooner, the crooning Ferry of later years, but maybe that slightly earlier sound that Ferry had to his voice when it was a bit more sort of hiccupy in places and just a little bit more stretched, if you will, a little bit rawer. There are elements of that in Eno's voice, but that's to be expected. I mean, Ferry was his former bandmate, not dissimilar to when Mick Ronson released his first album, Slaughter on 10th Avenue, and you could hear Bowieisms in his vocal delivery after he'd been a sideman to Bowie for so long. So that is going to happen, and I think Eno's voice here sounds great. So yeah, just a really, really interesting song to kick off an interesting album. So Needles in the Camel's Eye. I've still got no idea what the lyrics are about, by the way, but it sounds good. The lyrics all kind of pieced together very, very well. So great song for me to get us kicking off for this part. Okay, so we've moved from 1974, we're now going over to the 1990s, 1996 to be precise, and this was a record that in this group's career was pivotal, an absolute game changer. So just to set the scene very quickly, third album in, this band, and people will already know or should know, or maybe maybe you don't know if you don't know the band I'm talking about, but for people that are a fan of the band, they'll know who I'm talking about. Third album in, and this group had lost an irreplaceable or seemingly irreplaceable member. Songwriter, guitarist, wizard, virtuoso, producer, and or a fledgling producer at this point, just an absolutely incredible talent. But the group, almost like a phoenix from the flames, rose again. They got some new personnel in. They got Neil Codling in. They got another guitar wizard down in Dorset, teenage lad by the name of Richard Oakes, and they came back with an absolute stormer of an album. Nearly every song on it was a single, commercial success, critical success, and it leads off with an absolute stomper of a track called Trash. The band is Suede, and the record is called Coming Up. So yeah, Suede did the unthinkable back at the time. I don't even know if Suede themselves at one point were sure or completely sure whether they were going to survive the departure of Bernard Butler. He was a monumental presence in the group, and certainly a huge creator of that early Suede sound. But to Suede's immense credit, they came back with such a wonderful album in Coming Up. It does almost play like a bit of a greatest hits, to be fair. These are songs which were made for the radio. I feel very much a very different follow-on from the epic Dogman Star, which is my favourite ever Suede album. That is a masterpiece of a record, but it goes in many different directions. This one here does stay in one lane in terms of its sort of straight-up alternative guitar appeal, but it does it so well. And Trash is just such, it's a triumphant song. It kicks the album off brilliantly. It's got some lovely turns of phrase in there from Brett Anderson. singing about love, lovers on the street with a litter on the breeze. And that line in particular, I just love the juxtaposition of this imagery of, litter kind of blowing around, but, whilst it's obviously litter, it's dirty, it's trash, it's sleazy, the idea of it floating on the breeze, it almost kind of brings to mind the idea that, there's beauty to be seen in anything if you look closely enough. That's always the kind of the takeaway that I have from that line. And it also brings to mind as well that line, the film Sid and Nancy, directed by Alex Cox. And there's this brilliant scene in the film, again very beautifully shot, where Sid and Nancy are kissing in an alleyway, and there is litter kind of swirling and blowing around them, the garbage. And it's again that juxtaposition of this act of love, two lovers kissing against this backdrop of litter and sort of just garbage flying around them, and again just making something very beautiful from something that's very, very sleazy and quite dirty in many respects. And I just always feel that this song does bring that film to mind for me, even though they're not connected in any way. But Brett Anderson's vocal performance on it is really strong. It's powerful. It sounds like a man who's determined to prove a point. That's what I feel. I feel like the whole album's designed to do that, really. This was maybe laying down a marker. I'm sure, Bernard was listening out and wondering how this record was going to pan out. The first Suede album without his input in it whatsoever. And, the results speak for themselves. I don't need to comment on that too much, but very important album in Suede's career. Trash has certainly become a staple of Suede's live performances. It's always the one that I really look forward to hearing whenever I've had the pleasure of watching Suede live. They make me smile as well in a lot of ways, Suede, because they're such a divisive group within my friendship circle. I've got friends in my friendship circle, I'm happy to say, that I've known for over 30 years. And some of my friends, let's just say, are not fans of Suede at all. But there are the diehards in the group, which includes myself. And, I will always love and adore the work of Suede. I'll always love Brett Anderson's voice and the music that they've created over the years. And they're still going strong to this very day. So, yeah, brilliant song, Trash, number 69 in my top 100. And a great way to kick off a really, really fine album in coming up. Okay, so moving on then. So we're still in the UK for now. So we've had Brian Eno, we've had Suede. We're now moving over to 1980, and this is one of my favourite groups ever. Simple as that. This was a group that had two brilliant songwriters working alongside one another. It was very much the case that if one wrote the song, they sang it, and if the other wrote the song, they sang it. So in this case, we're talking about a song, an opening track, that is just a wonderful example of observational writing. So very, very witty, clever, memorable lyrics, very Kincksian in many respects, I would say. Definitely Ray Davies influenced, in my opinion, but being updated with that, with what was then that modern, early 1980s sound. So we've got a bit of a post-punk new wave sound accompanying these very typically, quintessentially English observant lyrics of everyday life. So the song is Respectable Street, the album is Black Sea, and the band is XTC. And on this occasion, the songwriter responsible in the group for the brilliant Respectable Street is indeed Andy Partridge, pictured there. And then his songwriting partner was Colin Moulding, who's pictured down there. So yeah, Respectable Street, what a song. Can't speak highly enough of it. Had to be in my top 100. It was just a case of where it was going to be ranked. So it starts off with this sort of almost like a bit of a music hall arrangement. There's even like a little bit of crackle added on to, give it that kind of old-fashioned vaudevillian sound to it. And, the opening lines of the song, which are repeated, later on in the track, just to give anyone a feel for who might not have heard the song before. It's in the order of their hedgerows. It's in the way their curtains open and close. It's in the look they give you down their nose. All part of decency's jigsaw, I suppose. So I was just sold on the song when I heard those opening lines. And because Andy sings them so clearly, because he's only accompanied by this little piano bit, those lines really do, those words really do hit home. And I think that is the key, that is the whole point of Respectable Street. It always feels like a song to me where Andy Partridge wants you to really take notice of what he's singing about. So to try and summarize my feelings towards Respectable Street, it's very much an example of a track. So, with Trash, for instance, there that I just spoke about by Suede, that very much for me is a track where it's like an outsider looking in, it's somebody with a different perspective. Brett is singing about alienation, disaffected youth, that sort of thing, people that aren't accepted by common society, if you will, maybe people that are trampled underfoot to some degree, maybe regarded as being the dregs of society. Whereas this song here is Andy Partridge very much poking fun at the hypocrisy of what would be deemed to be proper society. So that's kind of how I look at it. So these are people that Andy's singing about who are very prim, they're very proper. As he mentions, it's the order of the hedgerows. Everything looks nice and tidy and pretty on the outside, very orderly, but these curtain twitchers, these people have all got their own issues going on, which are anything but perfect. And that is where the lyrics really come into their own, the brilliance of the lyrics. I won't read any more parts of the lyrics on the video, because I'd love people to go away and listen to the song Respectable Street in their own right, but they'll know exactly what I mean when you come to hear it. So I think what Andy's trying to say is that, these people are very quick to judge the standards of others, but maybe they need to get their own house in order before they start pointing the finger. And that's very much the view that I take whenever I listen to Respectable Street. And that for me feels very much like a theme, or the type of song that Ray Davies would have been writing in his pomp. And I really do feel that this is, I am going to go out and say it might be a controversial opinion to some, but I do think Respectable Street is Kinks level writing. I really do. It's got this great crashing, very clanky sort of guitar sound to it that I find irresistible. Very much of its time, but just sounds great. Andy's voice itself on it, he's a bit shouty in places. He's a little bit clearer in other places, but I think every word is designed to hit home with power and precision, and he does a brilliant job of that. So yeah, Respectable Street by XTC, great song on a great album. What a way to kick an album off, just really going for it. There's a lot of sarcasm in there, a lot of wit, and I've not even mentioned some of the better lines in it, but what I will mention is, if anyone's going to go and listen to it, just listen out for the bit about the Avon lady, because that is a really well depicted study. It's a character study, that bit, and I do think it's something that just shows the observational skill of Andy Partridge. He must have been viewing that kind of thing as he was growing up, or certainly seen examples of that. So well played to him, and a great song. Okay, so we are going to move over to the US now, and we're going back from 1980 to 1978. So yeah, I mean, this album, wow, what an album, absolutely wonderful album. But again, I've just got to, I've got to resist the temptation of getting into all the other songs. So this song is a cover, and it's a brilliant cover. It does, for me, outdo the original, just because it's so memorable. The arrangement on this thing is amazing, and it just gets you pumped up for a fantastic listen to follow. So the song is Hanging on the Telephone. The album is Parallel Lines, and the band, of course, is Blondie. There we go, the brilliant Blondie. So Hanging on the Telephone was originally a song that was a power pop song, and it was recorded by a band called The Nerves. And the background of Hanging on the Telephone is that, for anybody who may not know, is that Jeffrey Lee Pierce, who is a brilliant artist in his own right, he founded a great group called the Gun Club, one of my favourite ever groups, and Jeffrey Lee Pierce was the official president of the Blondie fan club. So Jeffrey Lee Pierce, massive fan of Blondie. The Gun Club are a very different group to Blondie, but my word, Jeffrey did love Blondie. And the story goes is that he actually sent the song Hanging on the Telephone, the original song by The Nerves, on a cassette to the band, and the band heard it and got the idea themselves to do a a cover of it to record a version of it. And my word, did they smash that out the park. My word. It's iconic, even right down to the very, very start of it with, with the phone ringing, you hear the dial of the phone, the way that those drums by the, the late great Clem Burt, just the way it just crashes in. Debbie Harry just sounds so assured on it. She just sounds like she's just got that sort of New York sort of swagger thing going on in the vocal. I've always loved the voice on it. But my favourite part in it is there's like this sort of like brilliant keyboard line throughout. I think it's more, you hear it more so in the bits when she's singing "I Can't Control Myself," and then there's like why can't we talk again? And it's like this doodle 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 doodle. I'm not doing it any justice whatsoever with that, and I'm certainly not going to start getting into whoops and doo-doo-doo-doos and stuff on the videos, because I'll be here all day doing that, and it won't be good listening or watching for you, for you viewers. But there is just those irresistible keyboard bits in it throughout the song that just really light me up whenever they again come into play in the song. But all throughout, there's some great guitar work in there as well. As mentioned before, the drums crashing around by Clem Burke. Jimmy Destry it'll be, of course, on the keyboard duties. I just love his work on the song, I really do. But the whole package, the whole thing, it's just such an excellent cover, and I can only imagine it must have been a real game changer, I would have thought, for the Nerves, certainly for the songwriting, team behind it, or the person behind it, because the song did so well for Blondie that I can only imagine that it would have really paid dividends and done really well for the Nerves. So because I do think it was an obscure track, or pretty obscure, but Blondie just took a hold of it and made it their own, and in the case, in that process, recorded it to become the opening track of one of the most iconic albums in history, and certainly one of my all-time favourites. So I've got a lot of love and a lot of time for Hanging on the Telephone, and I'm really glad to be in a position to be talking about it here in this part of my series. Okay, so gone from Blondie, we're now moving over to the UK again, and this is a group that, in all honesty, I really need to start spending more time with this group, because I listened to them so much when I was a lot younger, and almost went through like a bit of like a full-on phase really with them, where I pretty much just listened to them non-stop, acquired a couple of albums in quick succession, really listened to them very intently, to the point where these songs really have or do inhabit a big part of my heart. I do have a big heart when it comes to music, as I'm sure people will have gathered about me by now, very passionate about my music. So even though this isn't an album that I spin a great deal, I've listened to it so much back in the day that the songs are just there for me when I think of them. And this opening track is just fantastic. It sounds great. I love the production job on it. It's got that kind of combination of new wave and like ska to it as well, which I've always been very drawn to bands that pull that off successfully. It's just got a real confidence to it. And again, this is a song that I think lyrically really stands up. So the song I'm talking about now is Mirror in the Bathroom. The band is The Beat, or they were known as the English Beat over in North America and other territories. And I should mention, just while I'm talking about the Beat and the English Beat there, when I showed Suede off earlier, they are known as the London Suede over in the US and North America, I believe, as well. They are the London Suede, but here in the UK they are, of course, just Suede. But back to the Beat, as they're known here, and the album is I Just Can't Stop It. Brilliant album, but yeah, Mirror in the Bathroom, sticking to these opening tracks. So I've always been really fascinated by the lyrics of Mirror in the Bathroom, and I don't know if I'm kind of going, if I've misunderstood it really, or gone off on a bit of a tangent with my own interpretation of the track. But for me, it's almost like it's like a bit of an exploration of narcissism, is what I've always felt. Because I don't know if the lead singer, I think it's Dave Wakeling, isn't it, who's singing it as well. I don't know whether or not he's experiencing something that he's maybe thought after the fact was like a narcissistic experience, because he's talking about looking at himself in windows and mirrors and that type of thing, and almost like stopping to catch a glance of himself, or whether or not he's observed or experienced, or other people doing that, and somehow is offended by it, or at least sort of perturbed by it to an extent that he would write a song about it. Now, I could be totally off there. That's just, it's only my opinion, and we're all entitled to have our opinions. That's the great thing about music. We can all take away different interpretations of lyrics and music, even if it's not necessarily what the artist or band intended. But for me, I've always thought that, like, there's just some passages in there where it almost feels quite prophetic as well. Because in this day and age, I think self-image seems to be so much more important and prevalent than ever before. I mean, this was a song written decades ago, and I think just that idea of people being really self-conscious, taking the time to look at themselves in a mirror, and make sure that they're looking good and checking themselves out. I see that so often myself now in this day and age. I mean, I saw it as well when I was growing up, so it's not anything new. When I was a lot younger back in the 90s and early noughties, you're always going to get people that, like to have a look at themselves, and not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just that I find it interesting that it became the subject matter for, at least the way I interpret it, a song like Mirror in the Bathroom. So I think there's other interpretations that have done the rounds as well. I think there were some references, or people may have thought that it was in reference to substance abuse or something, but I've never picked up on that particular interpretation at all. I think it's quite straightforward that it's very much about image and loving oneself in that respect. So, but it is a great song. It's got some fantastic bass work in it. Love the percussion elements to it. I mentioned the production on it earlier, and it's just a very compelling song and a great way to open up what is a stellar album in I Just Can't Stop It. So that is Mirror in the Bathroom by The Beat. Okay, so let's see how many songs we've got left to talk through. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, so I'm halfway through. So at this point in proceedings, because I've now done half of them for this batch, I just want to say thank you very much for everybody who's tuned in. I really hope that you're enjoying this part of the series, and it really does mean a lot for. It means a lot to me. Sorry that that you're giving me your time and attention in such a way. So yeah, thank you very much for that. Okay, so let's move on. So this group then now. One of my all-time favourite bands. I probably say that an awful lot, don't I, when I'm talking about these songs. But if you're going to make the top 100, and I tried not to play favourites, and I haven't done with a lot of bands, to be fair, later in the series and what I've shown already. But some songs and bands, artists, they just have to go in just because of the sheer love that that one has for them, and this song is no exception. So one of my favourite groups ever. This is my favourite album in 1982, and this song is one of my favourite songs of all time. Love the artwork on this album as well. A group coming out of Scotland. Their leader is just one of my biggest ever inspirations. Just love the man, really do love the man. Just an absolute legend to me. And the album we've got is You Can't Hide Your Love Forever. Look at that gorgeous cover there with the dolphins. The band is Orange Juice, and the song is called Falling and Laughing. So yeah, Falling and Laughing, what can I say about it? What I will say about it, like I would with all these songs, is please just go and listen to it. Just please listen to it. You must think me very naive as the opening lines of it. And in a lot of ways, it sort of like mirrors or echoes the music, because I do think in a strange way there is a naivety to the music. This is this is the debut album by Orange Juice, and what I mean by that naivety is that the group is trying, for better for worse, and I certainly think it's for better, that they're trying to fuse all these different influences together. So you've got a bit of Chic in there, you've got a bit of the Byrds, and I think there's like some Buffalo Springfield in there. There's even in later parts of the album, although I'm not again talking about albums in their entirety, but there's a bit of disco creeping in there as well, even a bit of new wave, bit of Blondie. I hear all kinds of stuff in this album, but that opening track, Falling and Laughing, it's got like a real funkiness to it. There is a funk element to it, but it's really jangly as well. So I do love my jingle jangle guitars, I really do. Some of the lyrics in there by Edwyn Collins, that was the legend I was, of course, talking about earlier. Just one of just one of the greatest people ever for me. I just love Edwyn Collins. And some of the lines in it, when he's singing like falling and laughing because I want to take the pleasure with the pain, and yes, some of the lyrical phrases in here in the song are just so lovely. Just a really well written song, and I just admire the audacity of it. To be honest, to put a song like "Falling and Laughing" as your opening track on your debut album, because there is like a naive audacity to it, which is a contradiction, I suppose, isn't it? But that's kind of what it is. It's confident enough to kind of execute what it's trying to do, but the band are maybe just not quite there musically, not quite to pull it off. And even in the vocal delivery, at times, you can really feel that Edwyn is operating at the very, very top of his ability, but somehow it just gives that song, Falling and Laughing, just a real charm. It is a bit ramshackle in places. The arrangement, not a scrappy arrangement, but just, it's not slick, but it just works. There's just something magical about it. And yeah, I just had to have the song in. It just makes me smile when I listen to it. And if a song makes me smile, then it's always going to be on to a winner. So yeah, Falling and Laughing by Orange Juice. Gorgeous song. Please give it a listen. Okay, right. And interestingly, actually, yeah, just been speaking there about a person operating maybe at their vocal limit. I'd have to say that this track's a good example of that as well. Certainly for the vocalist at the time, where his voice was at the time. So yeah, this song is from an album released in 1983. Another amazing band, a personal favourite. So I'm just going to get on with it and show it. So the album is Power, Corruption and Lies. The band is New Order, and the song is Age of Consent. So that is my next pick in my top 100, Age of Consent. So yeah, so let's cover the vocals first of Age of Consent. So yeah, like Bernard Sumner clearly in the song for me anyway is almost gaining confidence as that track is motoring along. It's a big long track. Quite appropriately, it's got a very hooky, very catchy hooky bass line by the one and only Mr. Peter Hooky Hook. One of his greatest ever bass lines, and that's saying something. When you take into account all the ridiculously good bass lines that he wrote in Joy Division, all the bass lines that he wrote in New Order, Monaco, Beyond. I mean, that the guy is just, he can just write a bass line for days. He really can. But Age of Consent, one of my all-time favourite bass lines by the man. But the work on it as well by, the layering and texturing work sonically by, Stephen Morris, Julian Gilbert, Bernard Sumner, all fantastic contributions musically to the song. But Bernard's voice, yeah, I do want to kind of spend a bit of time on that, because there are bits where he's clearly straining, like to sing, and again, I think it just lends a real charm to the song. There's a lot of great opening tracks that I could have chosen by New Order. They were in contention that were going to make the top 100, but when it came down to it, it had to be Age of Consent. It's a song that I've just loved for so many years. It's a song that I used to love putting on when I was getting ready to go out, when I was a lot younger, for a night on the town. It was regularly on rotation. It's just got such a bounciness to it. Feel like it's quite a euphoric, quite an up song as well, New Order. Age of Consent. I mean, a lot of New Order songs I felt were very up and quite euphoric, very much in contrast to what they were doing in Joy Division. But if you want to find out a little bit more, actually, now that it's just come into my head, if you want to know more about what I think of the album and Age of Consent as a song, then please do check out my album review video that I did on this album for a very, very dear friend of mine by the name of Michelle. I did it upon request for her. So what I'll do actually is I'll pop a link in the description box to this video. So if you do want to check out my full dedicated video just to this album and this album alone, I talk about the artwork, I talk about all the other tracks on here as well. If this is an album of yours that you do particularly love and you want to find out more about what I think of it, or maybe I've just whetted your appetite now to give it a listen, then yeah, please do check that video out as well. I'd be very grateful if you did. But yeah, Age Consent, lovely song, had to be in here, and a great example of a band all pulling together in one direction and just absolutely nailing their intentions. It's big, it's long, it's expansive, it's got quite a circular feel to it. Just keeps coming round and round and round, but never get tired of hearing it. So great song. Okay, so we've got three left. Okay, so now we're going over to 1977, and for a lot of people, this is arguably the greatest album ever made. I think that's a pretty fair claim. I mean, there will be people out there that disagree, but it's certainly an album with a lot of admirers. You know, there's a lot of people who've got a lot of love for the album, myself included. And yeah, the opening track on this thing. I mean, that this album is a masterpiece. It really truly is. Yeah, I mean, one of the greatest post-punk records ever made, and a fine example of two guitars just perfectly locked in, perfect synergy, and then an incredible rhythm section backing it up. So the song is See No Evil, the band is Television, and the album is, of course, Marquee Moon. And responsible for that wonderful guitar interplay that I was just talking about is Tom Verlaine here. Does a lot of the lead vocal work as well, Tom Verlaine on guitar, and then Richard Lloyd there as well. Just an unbelievably good band. So let's get this out of here. Let's have a proper look at it. Yeah, and I really do need to pay tribute, of course, to Fred Smith as well on the bass and Billy Ficker on the drums. So I did have the pleasure of watching Television live once. They were incredible, absolutely incredible. One of the best live bands I've ever seen. Just blew my mind, like so good. So yeah, anyway, just wanted to mention that because they're a special group for me, Television. When I was playing in a band many years ago, myself and the guitarist in the group called Rich, we both discovered that we had a mutual love of Television. And sometimes, you know, we'd jam a little bit of Marquee Moon in soundcheck and stuff, and we tried to write a couple of songs that were in a Television, you know, sort of style, if you will. So I do have good memories of listening to this album and making me think of my old days in the band, but also just love listening to the album because it's just an unbelievably good album. But See No Evil, yeah, I mean, it's got this great, as I mentioned, great guitar interplay. It's sort of like do 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 diddle do 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 diddle do do, like that little riff in it is just so catchy and infectious. Got a brilliant solo on there as well, quite a rocking, like a ripping solo on it, which I think is by Richard Lloyd. Please do correct me, somebody, if I'm mistaken. That it sounds more like Richard's style than Tom's, but if I am incorrect, you know, I'm always happy to be corrected. But yeah, it does sound to me more like Richard's style playing on that one, on that solo, and it is a corker. Great bass and, you know, drum work on it as well by Fred Smith and Billy Ficker. Really well played throughout. And Tom Verlaine's singing throughout as well. It might not be everybody's cup of tea, but I'm very drawn to distinctive voices. And there's just this way that he sings a line on it, on See No Evil. I get your point, you're so sharp. Like, whenever I hear that, the way he sings it just sounds so. I mean, I don't know whether it was intended to be patronising or sarcastic, but I think it's dripping with sarcasm. And again, although very different to Respectable Street by XTC, I think so much about a great song to me, especially an opening track, is just how the lyrics are sang and sold to the listener. And I think when you've got a singer like Tom Verlaine, who just had so much character and passion in his voice, might not have been the most technically brilliant or gifted singer in a traditional sense, but just being able to sell you a line, you know, that he's penned is critically important. And there are some really great lines in See No Evil, so please do check that one out. Great song that, and yeah, an absolute landmark album, Marquee Moon. Let me know if it is your all-time favourite, if you're getting involved in the comments. Okay, so just two songs to go then, and then part 4 will be, I had to think then, yeah, part 4 will be wrapped up and done and dusted. Let me just double check, it is part 4, isn't it? Doubting myself here now. Have a quick look at my notes here. Gosh, yeah, I can't believe it. Yeah, it is. It's part four. Wow, and then we'll be up to part five. Right then, so let's crack on. So I've been talking quite a lot, haven't I, about lyrics today and the importance of lyrics in this batch of songs. So with this song here, the lyrics I feel take a bit of a backseat just because they're quite indecipherable. That's not to say that they're not without merit. It's just that I feel that the intention of this song isn't for you to be hanging on to every word and deciphering what or analysing what's being said, because this is an absolutely outstanding example of a song from the shoegaze, dream pop, alternative guitar world. So the lyrics are very, very much buried because the voice is buried. It's a very beautiful sounding voice, though, very ethereal. And then the music that is around it is just an absolute like oral assault, like on the senses. It's just like nothing else I've ever heard. And I think a lot of people will probably agree with that statement. So before I go any more into the song, let's show the album off. So the song is called Only Shallow. The album is Loveless, released in 1991, and the band is My Bloody Valentine. So there we go. My Bloody Valentine, Loveless. So a lot has been written and said about this album. I know people that absolutely adore it. I'm in that camp, and I know people as well that really don't care for it. That's entirely their opinion. I totally get it. That's the whole beauty of music. It is subjective. We can all love and like what we like. But I do love this record. I really do love it. Again, it's very unique. So Only Shallow for me, again, I had to get it into my top 100. Even when I was putting the list together at the very early stages, I knew that this would make it in there, but I just had to kind of work out where it would go. So going on again about the actual song then. So it just comes storming out the gate. It's got these crashing drums on it by I think the pronunciation of his name is Cole McQuisogs or Quisog. I apologise in advance if I've mispronounced his name, Colm's name there. But the drumming is just straight in your face, and then there's like sounds that are being made that I could liken maybe to angry elephants, like just almost sounding like these trumpeting elephant sounds. Like it's just quite incredible, really, the sounds that are being made by Kevin Shields, Debbie Googe, and Belinda Butler as well. Butcher, sorry, thinking of Bernard Butler earlier. Belinda Butcher, beg your pardon. So the sound that the four piece are making is just off the scale. So when you have these moments where it sounds like a herd of angry elephants, and that's just my way of describing it, and it almost sounds like at times like it's almost underwater. It's very it's very discombobulating and very disorientating when you're listening, but in a really quite a quite a really unusually calming and quite a trippy sort of way. Like I actually find it quite comforting, although for some people it might be quite overwhelming. So you have these parts where it comes crashing in as it does at the beginning, but then during the verses there's almost like this really gentle passages where you just hear this very ethereal female vocal, and that is Belinda Butcher who's responsible for that. So you can't really hear what's being sung, but you can just almost like bliss out to those gentler parts before those elephants and everything else come crashing in, and it's just gorgeous. Actually, it's like a tidal wave of noise, like a bit of a tsunami of guitars and drums and bass and all kinds just coming at you, and it just kind of repeats that cycle throughout the duration of the song. So you get this big noisy bit, then you get your quiet bit. So it's a great study in dynamics in that respect, very, very well accomplished. And then the album just unfolds from there. But that's a story for another time, isn't it? Because we're just doing opening songs. So if you've never heard Loveless by My Bloody Valentine, please do give it a listen. Get involved in the comments. Let me know if you're a new listener to it. Maybe it's an album that you've heard a billion times, and maybe you've heard it too often. Maybe it's an album that you've heard a billion times and you want to listen to it a billion more times. Do let me know. I love it to bits. I need to revisit it, to be fair, and give it another play at some point. I have to be in the mood for it. I'm not going to lie. It is a mood album, but when I'm in the mood for it, then yeah, there's nothing better. And Only Shallow, great way to kick that album off. Okay, so finishing us off then for this part, We have got one of my favourite ever, I would call, guitar songs. Just simple as that. I am a guitar player, so I am going to be biased towards a lot of songs. Not only in this top 100, but songs that when I'm doing album reviews or just talking about music in general. I'm a guitar player, so I do, I am going to be listening out for great guitar stuff or work that I think is great. And similarly as well, being a professional writer, I'm always going to be drawn towards lyrics that intrigue me or make me think. So, that's just what I gravitate to. But we've all got our preferences, but these are mine, just being honest with you all. So for me, this is just a great guitar song. It's an epic song. It's big. For the time that this band recorded it, it was pretty conventional. It does have quite a traditional sort of, intro, verse, chorus sort of thing, which prior to that, they hadn't really done that often, I don't think, anyway. And they'd had quite a few albums out by this point, and a lot of it was much more experimental, avant-garde, very much part of the, what was it called, the no wave influences of New York, which is where the band came from. But to finish us off on another wonderful album for this part, so this takes us up to 61. We've got the song Teenage Riot, and the album is Daydream Nation, and the band is Sonic Youth. And it came out in 1988. So because this is a gatefold, I think this might be the only gatefold actually I had today. So as is always the case here in the Vinyl Sanctuary, if I've got a gatefold to show, then I will indeed show it off. So let me see if I can get that in there for you properly. Hopefully the ring light isn't doing too much there like that. Let me see. There you go. It's a brilliant picture of Kim Gordon there. There we go. It's the rest of the guys there, isn't it? And you think you've got Thurston Moore there pointing there. Those shades on. Great haircut there from Thurston at that point as well. So yeah, Teenage Riot. Wow, what can I say about it? So it really does kick off an epic of an album, a double album, this one, Daydream Nation. So yeah, why do I love those guitars so much? Well, again, kind of similar to See No Evil, like by Television. There is some great guitar interplay going on between Thurston Moore and Lee Ranaldo. That there is just some great little bits and pieces just being played that kind of, come in and out of focus when you're listening. The guitars are very tuned quite unusually as well, which I've always liked about Sonic Youth. They played quite exotic chords in some respects, really. A lot of arpeggiated stuff going on as well. Just pieces interlocking with the other, which I find very compelling, very, very easy on the ear to me. Again, I like the fact that it is a conventional track. It's a big, long song as well. I like the fact that they don't experiment too much with Teenage Riot. They do keep it pretty straight. It's got a great little spoken word bit at the beginning by Kim Gordon, which I've always found quite captivating, especially when she's repeating the words "We Will Fall," which I believe is in reference to the Stooges song of the same name. Then Thurston Moore kicks in later on with his vocal performance, which is very cool sounding. Again, talking about again, very self-explanatory lyrics. He's talking about a teenage riot, so it is like a call to a bit of a state of the nation type address thing to me, a bit of a call to action, speaking to the youth of the time, and maybe just encouraging people or maybe discouraging people, however you look at it, from whatever it is that they're getting up to. But for me personally, it's just a musical triumph. I've just always loved the rhythm work on it as well. The drum and bass interlocking the way they do. But for me, it's the guitars that really stick out. Sometimes I am just looking for guitars in a song to really light me up. Sometimes it could be an organ solo, it could be a drum fill, it could be a number of things. It could be a great bass line, as is the case with Age Consent. But for me, Teenage Riot is as good as it gets with guitar work for Sonic Youth. I do love this album, and I've got a lot of time for it. And this is quite a special purchase for me, because it was one of the last records that I bought from the shop that I used to work in. in the town that I grew up in not long before we had to close down. So I do have a lot of memories of playing that and listening to it back in the day. And Teenage Riot is just a song that whenever I listen to it again, it makes me happy, and I'm always there for it. So there we are. That is my attempt at describing and explaining to you all my reasons, my justifications, my musings as to why those 10 songs were chosen, comprising 70 to 61. So when I'm back, it'll be 61 up to 51. Gosh, yeah, that's right, in part 5. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. Really appreciate your time and attention, and I do hope that you enjoyed the songs that I showed today, and maybe they have encouraged you, talking about them, to check out not only the songs but maybe their parent albums as well. If you are new to the Vinyl Sanctuary and you wish to join me in taking refuge in records, then please do consider subscribing to the channel. I'd be very grateful if you did. If you do make the choice to subscribe, then please do remember to click that notification bell, and it will keep you up to date and alert of all future content that I've got landing. This series will be keeping me busy for the foreseeable at the time of recording. As I've been saying today, I've got a number of parts still left to do, and then I've already got some ideas as to how I'm going to follow it up. I've had some suggestions from dedicated viewers here on the channel, so I'm already thinking about what will follow on from this series. But for now, I'll keep the focus on the task at hand. And if you want to play along and get involved, and you want to start sharing your top 100 with me, if you're maybe joining late, or if you've been doing it in real time, then please do show me what you've got for your section of your top 100. I always enjoy commenting and getting in touch with people, catching up, and just trading opinions and making recommendations and stuff. And yeah, do let me know what you think of what I showed. For better, for worse, be honest and get in touch. Okay, so that's me done. Thanks again, everybody. Take care, and until next time, bye for now.